let's tackle the referendum briefly at this point. Roger, what's your take on the news that the government is sending out pamphlets to homes across the country, setting out the argument for staying in?
Well, it's outrageous. They're breaking clear commitments that they've given repeatedly that they wouldn't engage and spend public money on one side or the other side. And they are putting themselves in a position where the Remain campaign will be spending many, many millions of pounds, and in this case of taxpayers' money, more than the Leave campaign can spend.
Isn't it right that the public are provided with the facts?
The public provided with the facts would be good. And if you go back to the 1975 referendum, which I can nearly remember, they were actually presented with a double-sided sheet. So you had the in arguments and the out arguments. What the government is doing is a very big, glossy brochure printed, by the way, by a German company that receives funding from the Commission, and it puts very contentious arguments in favour of staying in, and it ignores the arguments in favour of staying out. It's entirely wrong.
Kat, but what do you think? Is it wrong?
I actually agree with Roger here, although I'm on the side of the in. Of course, we'd like to stay in the EU. I don't think it's fair. This is taxpayers' money. I do agree we need an informed, balanced debate, and there is a lot of scaremongering going on both sides, I have to say. And I think we need to discuss this in an adult way, but we shouldn't be biased. If we are providing facts, it should be done on both sides.
Well, you both want the public to be provided with more facts.
Yes.
Let's get one fact from each of you, if we can. Roger Helmer, what is the biggest reason that people here in the East Midlands in particular should vote, in your opinion, to leave?
Well, of course, there are all the economic benefits and the democratic benefits, but what I find talking to people on the doorstep and in marketplaces and streets as we campaign is the real concern about immigration and the impact that has on social infrastructure and social cohesion, on schools, on hospitals, on waiting lists, and also, by the way, on wage compression, because the availability of very large numbers of people coming in, of course, tends to depress wages, especially of the relatively low-skilled and unskilled workers.
Kat, but in your opinion, what's the number one reason why people in the East Midlands should stay in?
Because the EU provides us with really good legislation to protect workers' rights, disability rights, women's rights, and also environmental protection. We have 80% of environmental law comes directly from the EU, and I don't trust this government that their priority would be to protect the environment, to protect the normal person on the street. They've shown very clearly they are providing tax breaks for the rich, and we all are feeling the austerity and cuts. So I would like to have the EU to provide us with these important legislation. And yes, we could have this government to provide these laws, but they wouldn't, and they don't.
You don't trust the British people to elect a government that will act in the interests of this country. I do trust the British people. That is the difference.
OK, well, I'm sure we are going to be coming back to the EU later on in the programme. But next, power to the people is a glib cliché often used by politicians. But one city council here in the East Midlands is taking it a step further, offering gas and electricity. Nottingham City Council has set up its own energy supply company. It's gaining customers all over the country, and other councils are now considering getting in on the act. Here's Helen McCulloch.
It's something we can't live without. And yet it can be a massive strain on a household's budget.
You like to keep your house warm over winter. You like to make sure that you're not sitting there cold all the time. You need to cook and do all the things around your house, have your lights on. So, you know, I am always conscious of the fact that you know, switching lights off when they're not in use. I'd seen some adverts about Robin Hood Energy in and around Nottingham, and I just thought I'd give them a try. I saved just under £400 when I switched, and my tariff and with the saving, it's meant a lot to me and my finances, definitely.
The Big Six have dominated the energy market for years, and when customers are faced with rising gas and electricity bills, they're often given the advice to switch provider. Now, Nottingham City Council has provided an alternative to the Big Six, setting up its own company, Robin Hood Energy. The question is, what's in it for them?
It is about tackling fuel poverty, getting the cheapest possible prices for as many customers as we can. We also think it contributes towards our energy self-sufficiency as a city, but it's also something that people take a pride in, and they're proud that Nottingham City Council launched this initiative.
Dr Hafiz Abdo is an expert in the energy business. He welcomes the new company, but warns they may have a bumpy road ahead of them.
Exchange rate can vary because, oil and gas, oil initially is measured by US dollar, and the exchange rate is beyond our control. Then the awareness of the community of the existence of that company need to be really made well across the Nottingham, so the community can support the company. The finance is a huge issue.
Saving money was a big thing for me, but they're also a not-for-profit company. I work in the not-for-profit industry, and having that idea that somebody isn't just out to grab your money and make a profit is really important to me.
Claire may be one of the first to get her gas and electricity from the council, but she's unlikely to be the last. Other local authorities are thinking of following Nottingham's lead, and Derby could be next.
Well, Roger Helmer, the government wants to see more competition in the energy market. So is a council like Nottingham City Council setting up an energy company like this? Is that a good idea?
I'm not sure that it is. I think the government is selling us a false prospectus here. They're trying to pretend that high energy prices are just the fault of those wicked energy companies. Actually, they're the fault of the overcommitment to very expensive, intermittent, unreliable, renewable technologies and the closing down, as Europe has demanded we do, of reliable, low-cost power stations like coal-fired power stations and so on. That is what is driving energy prices, and talking about shopping around and getting a bit more competition is really fiddling at the margin compared to those basic issues.
Green technology pushing up those prices.
That's simply not true, and we've seen it in Germany that prices have been going down. What's really important is we need to look after our environment. I don't want to live in a polluted country, and I welcome this move of Nottingham City Council. However, I would like to see that they're using renewables, because again we are facing climate change, and it's the greatest threat we are all facing. Plus, over the long term, it will get the prices down. At the moment, we're subsidising fossil fuels much more still than green technology, and that's a fact.
It's a nonsense.
It's absolute fact. Plus, renewables worldwide provides more jobs than the entire fossil fuel industry together. So we have also an economic reason and gain from this.
Roger Helmer, it's well known you don't believe in climate change.
I don't believe that human activity makes a major contribution to climate change. I agree that the climate changes, it always has for millions and millions and millions of years. No, I'm afraid that Kat is simply wrong there. Domestic energy prices are going up very rapidly in Germany, are a major social problem. They've done that in order to protect their energy-intensive industries, which is why you can make steel in Germany, and it's really extremely difficult to make steel in Britain. So I'm all in favour of protecting energy-intensive businesses, but not if it means piling the costs onto domestic consumers.
We already have a large energy supplier here in the East Midlands. They're called E.ON, and they say that they welcome competition in the energy market generally, but they also pointed out that actually they employ 5,000 people from this region. Should a council like Nottingham City Council be entering into a competition like this, if you like, with an energy company?
Well, they will be then providing jobs, so it doesn't really matter. I think we know that smaller companies usually serve better customer care. Plus, Nottingham City Council's aim would be really to help people to manage these prices and out of poverty, and energy poverty. Now, E.ON's priority is profit. And that's the problem with all of those private cooperative markets, that they are profit-driven and not driven to provide and help customers.
So how would UKIP bring down energy prices then, Roger?
Well, we would scrap the European Union's large combustion plant directive and indeed their new medium combustion plant directive, and we would focus on reliable, low-cost forms of energy, and we would reduce all the massive subsidies and green taxes that are not only raising energy prices but are closing Port Talbot as well.
Kat?
I really find it astounding. We know that thousands of people die every year because of our air pollution from coal power stations. We've seen in China people having, you can see the smog there. They've been ordering bottles from Canada with fresh air. This is the future. If we don't look after our home, this is our home, we're living in it. And we know that thousands of people die because of the poor quality, and also we are going to be facing that we run out of fossil fuels sooner or later. That's a fact. So why not start this transition now?
Not for centuries. And can I just say, coal-fired power stations, yes, they are extremely dirty in China, but the technology is there.
Air pollution is a serious problem in this country.
We know how to take particulates and SOx and NOx and the dangerous gases out of coal-fired power stations.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
We know to some extent, and that actually is quite an expensive technology. So this is not the answer.
OK, well, we'll leave that there for the moment. Thank you very much. There are, of course, other votes taking place this year besides the EU referendum. Some of our local councils are holding elections in May, and on the same day, we'll all get the chance to vote for new police and crime commissioners. Elected police commissioners have the job of setting a budget for their police forces, deciding on priorities for tackling crime and holding the Chief Constable to account. The role was introduced 4 years ago and has been controversial ever since. So what exactly does a PCC do? And has it all been worthwhile? Chris Doidge has spent a day following the Derbyshire Commissioner, Alan Charles.
Police and crime commissioners watch the police force. So what happens if we spend a day watching the Watcher? Alan Charles is Derbyshire's first PCC, but in a few weeks' time he'll retire.
Morning. Hey up, Kirsty. You all right? Good weekend? Good. I think, to be honest, at the start of this process, I think some of the candidates thought this would be a 2-day-a-week job. I knew then, if you're going to do a job, you've got to do it properly. It is full on.
He's got a busy day ahead, starting with his weekly management meeting.
Do we need to go through the minutes, or are you OK just with that? Obviously, we can look at the big issues like child sex exploitation, sexual abuse, domestic violence, human trafficking. Derbyshire Police deal with that day in, day out. But when I speak to members of the public, they say to me the big issues for them is speeding, it's about parking, it's about dog fouling, it's stuff like that which may seem really small beer to people, but it's about the quality of life for people. Because I'm here as a Police and Crime Commissioner, they know they can talk to me, I can respond and I can react. And what's the completion date on that?
As well as acting as a watchdog, the Police and Crime Commissioner is responsible for things like supporting victims.
If we wind back, we're just coming up to Police and Crime Commissioner elections now for the second time.
What do you think the biggest impact you've had on people in Derbyshire's lives has been?
I think one of the biggest is a launch we've just done of the victim services. That will be a massive impact for people. But it's also about managing the very tricky time we've had with budget cuts in Derbyshire, along with the Chief Constable and his senior team. I don't think the public in Derbyshire have actually noticed a great deal of difference to policing. There has been a difference, but it's been kept under the radar to a large extent.
The biggest update really is the recruitment of staff now.
I have a weekly dialogue with the Chief Constable. I think, unfortunately, in Derbyshire is very much aligned, and I think that's why it's been successful, because we've got that positive relationship. But where there are issues like this, I put them into my police and crime plan, and then the Chief Constable's role is to actually deliver that police and crime plan for me, but on behalf of people in Derbyshire.
How would you characterise your relationship with the Chief Constable?
Professional, mutual respect.
Is that too cosy?
It's not cosy at all, Chris. I mean, you've been to some of the meetings. Would you think I'm cosy when I'm probing into areas? I don't think I am.
Operationally, it was nothing really. I mean, on a volume sense.
Whoever replaces Alan will have to strike their own balance between holding the force to account and being a close partner in the fight against crime.
Well, we're joined now by Dr Tek Kong, a Conservative councillor with Oadby and Wigston, who's also a former police surgeon. Now, as you all know, that we can't discuss individual candidates in the studio, and we'll have a full list of people standing in the region at the end of this discussion. But Dr Kong, let's have a look at the role of the PCC. You've worked very closely with the police. Do you think that they enjoy having a police and crime commissioner over them?
I think we probably have to adjust to the new climate of transparency, the way society is moving. And I think in view of the various new crimes we're having, I think it certainly helps having a PCC.
So it's not been an interference from as far as the police are concerned at the level that you were working?
No, I see a very positive role for the PCC, in fact.
OK. So has it been a good idea? And what do you think that they've actually achieved, in your opinion?
I think first of all there was very low buy-in from the public, probably because it was promoted as a political entity. I think the PCC role should be seen more as a community role, and there's a lot the PCC can do, especially now that we have the Health and Social Care Bill, where the police sits on the board in the Health and Wellbeing Board.
So they can get stuck in at local level.
That's
okay.
right.
Roger, UKIP are fielding candidates again this time round. So why do you think the PCC is an important role?
Well, it's not perhaps the structure that we would have created, but we do very strongly support the democratisation and the accountability of the police force, and we believe police forces should be responding to the needs of the public. And ideally, the PCC should be right at the front of that operation and should be in touch with ordinary people, with voters, so that he can feed back the opinions and the objectives and the aspirations of those people with regard to the police force into the police operation. Now, if they're not doing that, then they become invisible, and I think that is the concern. We had an extremely low turnout last time. My fear is that we may do this time, and what we want is people who form that bridge between the general public and the police and bring the two together, as it were.
Kat Burke, no Greens standing in our patch for PCCs. Are you against the idea of them, or is it rather the £5,000 deposit that's rather getting in the way?
Well, we are in principle against it. We would rather have the money spent. I mean, I believe PCCs earn between £65,000 and £100,000. That's a lot of money, particularly these times of austerity. We'd rather spend the money to employ community officers, to have people really on the street that can engage with the public.
But as we've just heard from both our colleagues here in the studio with us, the role of the PCC, if it works, is to get really close into the local community.
Well, but it's one person.
Yes, and you're very keen on that local democracy, aren't you, as a party?
But it's one person. We would rather employ more people who can spend the time directly with people. Now, of course, the £5,000 is an issue, and I believe that the whole selection process, last time we had a 12% turnout, I think it's just part of the problem we have today in the UK with politics. This government has been voted in by only 23% of the votes. People are disengaged with politics, and that's very clear. We need to change it. We need to change the system and the voting system.
I think a lot of people were turned off, weren't they, by the cost and the salary of the PCCs could realise. And one of the criticisms, Dr. Kong, of the role of Commissioner is that it does it can add another layer of bureaucracy. And perhaps people just say, we just don't need that, an extra tier of
I don't really see that. There's only one police commissioner and maybe a few support staff. But if you have the right person of the right calibre who aligns himself with members of the public, then I see it's tremendous value for money. If you look at the raw value of the salary, which is about £70,000, well, you probably can get 2-3 police officers, and that's about it. Whereas if you get a person of high calibre who knows what's needed for community policing, you get a lot more benefit out of the £70,000 than just 3 police officers.
What do you think will be the turnout, though, as we know, and we've been saying 12% last time, that could happen again or worse?
Yes, that's my concern. I think it's been sold, as I said earlier, as a political entity rather than as a community facility. If the public realises that the PCC is there for them, and if the PCC aligns himself or herself with the public, then there's a lot to be gained. Because one of the key roles of a PCC is to actually win the support of the public, work with them, use all the intelligence they can bring to bear in preventing crime.
What does it say, though, when we know for a fact that 3 out of 4 of the PCCs currently standing are standing down?
I can't answer for them.
Maybe they were too old when they started. But I think this is the big test. I don't think that the PCCs that exist at the moment have really succeeded in making that impact on the public. It's up to the next generation of them, as it were, to do that, because if they don't, I think then, and the turnout keeps going down and down and down, people really are going to say, well, this isn't working, they're not actually delivering on what we thought they were there for.
Perhaps the role has been tougher than they thought it was going to be.
Well, I think it's very clear. Last time nobody voted, or very few people voted, and we're seeing, again, disengagement. So the argument from our side, it really stands and is shown to be true, that people are disengaged. And this is a lot of money. Most people, £70,000 is a lot of money. particularly during times where we're not all in it together and where we're all feeling the cuts. And I find it really difficult that we're having these police commissioners who are all part of political parties, and we're really bringing in party politics in policing, which I'm not sure is the right thing, and I'm not sure that people want that.
Well, we'll soon know, won't we, when the elections take place next month. Dr. Kang, thank you very much indeed for coming into the studio and talking to us now.